All right, it's time to talk with our featured guest, Dr. Pauline Lay. Pauline, how's it going?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. Real quick, if you don't mind us asking, where are you located at?
I'm in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay. So, if you can start us off by telling us a little bit about your past, your present, how'd you get to where you are today?
So, starting with, I guess, where I'm at, Jacksonville, Florida, this is where I grew up. And my family, I feel like I can't really speak about where I am or where my future is going without starting with my family and where they started. So, my parents, they're both from Vietnam and they immigrated here. So, just seeing how they built a life for themselves being in America, I think that was always instilled in me, and they've always owned their own businesses. So pretty much my entire life, I've only seen business ownership. So I never saw what it was like to work for somebody else, at least through my parents and through my family. They've taken things into their own hands and had to figure it out. That was always just instilled in me. And I knew I wanted to be a business owner. Like when I was a kid, I always thought that was what was the norm. And then
Hmm.
throughout school, my parents were always very strict. I grew up in a very strict Asian household, very high standards, and you couldn't underperform. And
Hmm.
grades really mattered. And I was the oldest child. So that's like a whole podcast in itself, right? Uh,
Yeah.
so I think school was always like embedded in me because my parents didn't have the option to go to school. Coming to America, they just had to figure out how to survive and feed the family and stuff.
Hmm.
And now I have the opportunity to go to school. They didn't expect any less. So it was, we're going to sacrifice everything for you to be able to go to school kind of thing. So if I was underperforming in school, I was definitely hearing about it and getting in trouble. So pressure was always on through up until high school. I took school pretty seriously. Not that I was smart or anything like that. I think I just had to work a lot harder than most people. Things didn't really come natural to me. And I understand like why now, but looking back, I didn't really understand why I struggled in school. But up until high school, that was when like I stopped caring just because of personal things in my family life. And, you're a teenager, you're the oldest child. And at the time, it was like, well, if my parents aren't noticing, and obviously at the time, all I was seeking was validation. So if my parents aren't noticing, then what's the point of going to school? So then I actually withdrew. And then I was like, oh, I can do nails because I worked my entire life too, like with my family through their businesses. So I
Hmm.
knew what that was like. And I thought I could do nails for the rest of my life and I would be fine. And so I withdrew, and my parents were going through a divorce at the time. And one of my teachers was just like, don't do this. Like, you're really smart. Don't waste the rest of your life. You're going to regret this kind of thing. And I'm like, I'll be fine. And just more and more of those people saying that to you, you're like, okay, maybe I should really think about this. And when I would enrolled back in, by then I was in my neighborhood school because I was in a magnet school at the time when I withdrew. When I enrolled back in, I was a sophomore going into my junior year. And I went to the guidance counselor and I asked, I will only enroll back in school if I can graduate this year. So how do we make that happen? And we looked at how many credits I already had, how many credits I need to stack up to like finish this year. I just didn't want to waste another 2 years in school just sitting there writing definitions. I knew I wanted to just get started on life. And I think looking back, that's probably when I developed a skill to be able to ask the right questions and asking the
Hmm.
right people. Because if I were to ask another guidance counselor and they're just like, no, there's no way, you need to do 2 more years of school, would I have continued or would I have stayed as a dropout? I think that's a big skill that I feel like people should practice when you're receiving no's or rejection, trying to learn how to ask the right questions because some people are saying no because they're maybe not understanding your question. So I did another year of high school. And then during that time, I still had like really strict Asian parents. And it wasn't, what are you doing after school? It was, where are you going to college kind of thing. I was like, okay, I'll just sign up for UNF, which is like the university right here. I didn't know what I was going to school for. It's not like I knew I was always going to be a dentist. I just kept moving. I kept the traction going. And it's just, okay, whatever's supposed to happen for me next will happen as long as I'm just taking those next steps kind of thing.
Hmm.
And then obviously going through college, all of your requirements to get into dental school, which is a podcast in itself. I feel
Yeah.
like another good topic to talk about. And then I applied to dental school and graduated and then moved back to Jacksonville because I knew this is where I wanted to build a community, and just seeing how they supported my family and like my parents' businesses throughout the years, I knew I was wanting to come back here and build a business.
So business ownership was always there, right?
Mhm.
Gotcha. Interesting. What were some of the things that you saw your parents with business ownership struggle with that now you're like, oh my gosh, I super relate now?
I'm guilty of this. I think from the outside in, you have so many opinions of what people should be doing with their businesses,
Hmm.
right? And how they run their businesses, how they treat their employees, how they treat their clients. And my parents just ran their businesses so differently. Like my dad runs it one way, my mom runs it one way, and they didn't have the same vision. And then there's outside noise now, right? When other people
Hmm.
have opinions. So they were going in different directions when it was one business. They weren't running two separate businesses. So there was a lot of conflict in that. So I feel like the biggest issues they had was they didn't have a vision, and they couldn't lead people towards that vision and how to resolve issues in order to continue towards the vision.
Interesting. So vision was pretty huge so in your practice, what's the vision? Like, what's the mission statement?
So we're humans working on humans with humans. So we're never forgetting that, right? Because I think it's easy to get consumed in the everyday, the product, the operations, and we always have to remind ourselves like we are all human here. There's room for mistakes, there's room for learning, and we're also going to celebrate our wins because we're also human. And
Hmm.
then we are working on humans, which are our patients who are also going through life, different chapters of their lives and their struggles and their wins. We have people getting engaged, getting married, and also like struggling with things like their health. So working on humans with humans. And then we have a team. And in that same aspect, we're all doing life for the first time together. And I
Hmm.
think that's where there's grace given in that.
I like that. Humans, working on humans with humans.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I like that. So then talk to me a little bit more about asking the right questions, specifically when it comes to treatment acceptance and hiring your team.
So treatment acceptance. So that's going to be us and the patients. And it goes back to vision. Like, how did they envision their goal or their end, right? And our jobs is to think with the end in mind and to get them there. Some people don't know what their ideal smile is supposed to look like. They
Hmm.
just know that it's not what they have right now. Or I do a lot of facial aesthetics, so a lot of facial balancing. Like people have their photos that they'll come in with as inspiration, and it's just asking questions like, so what is it you like about it? And what is it you don't like about it? Because we can both look at it and say we love it, but we could be loving it for totally different reasons. So asking the right questions in your medical history, your dental history, and in our case, we have facial aesthetics history as well, is so key because we can put together the puzzle pieces of where they've been, where they are now, and then where they're trying to go. And our jobs is to be that vector that's going to get them there. I don't overpromise. I'm very realistic with their journey before they met me and then their journey moving forward. I think where people bite themselves in the butt is when they overpromise. And there's so many different types of patients too. And a lot of the patients I see are defeated because they've had to see so many specialists, different doctors, and they're repeating themselves, the same chief concern over and over. And no one's really hearing them. No one's hearing their issue, right? They're just throwing whatever at the wall, and then whatever sticks is how they're going to treat them. And I'm not saying that's true for every practitioner, but this is, again, the patient coming into me and just letting them vent. I'm just letting them catch me up to this point right now. That's the most important part of getting to know your patient before you even touch them, is even understanding, is this a case that I can even help the patient with? Because
Mm.
they're advocating for themselves. They have gone from doctor to doctor. They're in constant pain. They're suffering headaches and migraines. And I had a patient today, actually. She went somewhere. She says she got a steroid shot. And then she went somewhere else and they gave her a shot in her arm. She went to the emergency room and they gave her this. And I try to explain to the patients, we're all a product of our own training. No one's doing, I would hope, wrong to you. We're all trying. That's all we're here to do as a healthcare provider. If you go to a chiropractor, they're going to try to align you. If you go to a surgeon, they're going to have a surgical option for you. So we're all just a part of our own training, and we have different tools in our tool belt. Now it's our jobs to figure out, are we the right fit for you, right? And I feel you, I hear you. You're having to advocate for yourself to make the most informed decision, and it cannot be easy. I can't imagine being in your shoes right now, but what I can do is to review my findings with you today and also come up with a treatment plan with my tools and my tool belt, right? In order to help you, because that's our goal here, is to always leave our patients better off than how we met them.
Interesting. So then when it comes to, I guess, talking to the patient, are you using more specific questions, or are you just saying less in the question to get more from them?
In my questionnaires, I do ask very specific questions because certain questions tell me a lot about where they've been and then what they even think about dentistry, or what they even think about facial aesthetics. And it could be as simple as like, when's the last time you got Botox? Or a good one actually is, I always ask if patients have had braces in the past, and are they happy with where their teeth are right now? And then do they have retainers? And another key thing with retainers is, what kind of retainers do they have?
Yeah.
Because we'll say like it's the lingual bar that they have on their teeth is the retainers, but that's not the one that I'm referring to. As I believe in full coverage plastic over all of the teeth in order to retain teeth. So it's like, if I can just ask, do you have retainers? And they say yes. And then I'm just assuming that they have clear Vivera retainers, then that's on me, right? I did the patient a disservice by not asking the proper questions. Or even as simple as, a patient of mine last week thinks he has an electric toothbrush, and it was not an electric toothbrush that we recommend, right? That has like the pressure sensitivity, the one that tells you that every 30 seconds to move on to the next quadrant, the one that has the guides for you. It was a battery operated one with the bristles all frailed out, that was no longer even effective, So now we're asking very specific questions. What kind of floss are you using? Send me a photo of your toothbrush, right? Because these
So
things
you asked that, like, send me a photo? Interesting. This is all online or no? Like the questionnaire?
Our patient questionnaire. Yeah.
So they fill it out before they visit you. Okay, those are interesting. What other questions are on there? Because it seems like we can go real granular here and ask like tons and tons of questions. What happens when, I guess, it's not all filled out?
We do it in person when they come in. And it's very important to make the patient feel heard and that their efforts were worth it, right? Because my questionnaire is a lot lengthier than other offices. So when they do come in, I'm not having them repeat themselves. I'm going to say, I reviewed what you filled out, and I'm going to go over it with them, right? And making sure they're not repeating themselves on the phone when they first call, to my receptionist when they come in, to my assistant when we bring them back to the room, and then having to repeat themselves again to me. So we're talking about it. And even if they mention it to me because I didn't get to it yet, I always say, oh yeah, I saw that because you filled that out. Because it just reiterates to the patient, oh wow, doc did take out the time to review that because it took time out of my life to fill that questionnaire out. Don't we all hate calling Comcast and then getting transferred around? What's your name? What's your account number? What's your issue? I never want that for my patients.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting. So then that's the procedure when it comes to accepting treatment, getting to know the patient, diagnosing a little bit more, things like that. I know you take a lot of notes. You mentioned that before, right? Your whole team takes a lot of notes, right? And that is inputted where?
We use Oryx as our EMR. So everything patient related is in Oryx in the patient chart. Anything practice related is through, we use ClickUp, but you can use any project management software. So we always document everything because the less assumptions, the better. The less you have to repeat yourself, the better. Just specifically speaking about notes on patients, we write everything in their patient chart.
And then with ClickUp, break that down for me. Like, what do you specifically do on ClickUp and what does your team do?
I found the issue with to-do tasks and stickies, and everyone has an ongoing to-do list, right? Whether it be your honey-do list at home or your to-do list at work. What I found cumbersome was that is we would always have to check up on it. Did the person do it? Or check up on the status of it. And then you end up feeling like you're just nagging them or you're micromanaging, and nobody wants to do that. And then on the receiving end, nobody wants to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get to it. Why are you asking me? Why are you over me asking that? It's on my to-do list. And I just didn't like the culture that was building. It was the same frustrations I would hear with my friends. Like, I've been asking them to do this and it's still not getting done. I'm sure people nag about their husbands that way too, right? So I was like, there has to be a better place that we can systemize the normal things that have to get done in the practice, the household chores, but then also the one-off tasks. Either we need to get back to this patient, or this patient has a complaint that we need to address, or this patient is waiting on this, or we need to receive photos about this. Where are these landing, and where are they being tracked and like getting done? And then the expectations also need to get set. So that's when I started looking into all the project management softwares. I literally looked at Monday. I looked at so many different ones. I think ClickUp was what resonated to me at the time for what I was looking. Just one task alone, you can set the priority. So now your team understands, is this just a task that eventually needs to get done? Or is this urgent, like today? Or like you could set due dates. And then you can actually write notes and have conversations within that task. And it's not me just abruptly going to interrupt one of my teammates in their normal workday about something that I maybe have felt like it was a priority, but it wasn't a priority to them because they also have other things that they have to do, right? So ClickUp was our solution to all of that, whether it be an ordering list. Let's say like we're out of etch and Alex needs to go and tell Nara about it, but she's obviously not going to go tell Nara right now, this minute, because Nara has a normal work day as well and she has patients. She's just going to go add it on the order list, but put urgent. So when Nara gets to her end of day task, she'll see that, but she's not getting interrupted in her day.
So it's urgent, but everybody checks it. Because I was going to ask you, what if they forgot to check ClickUp for that hour? And then they're like, oh no, the thing you were urgent about, an hour passed. So everything's urgent, but everybody checks it at the end of the day?
So we all have a flow. So patient-wise, we huddle in the morning so we know what we are preparing for the day. So when it comes to like patient communications throughout the day, we're using Slack. And we have a thread for each patient. So Caroline will communicate with the rest of the team. Patient is ready to be brought back. And then we'll use that specific thread just to talk about that one patient for that. And then start another thread for another patient and another thread for that patient. Throughout the day, we are very focused just on patient care as much as we can, because everything else can wait. So we're using Slack throughout the day. We're using Oryx throughout the day. And then we're using ClickUp throughout the day. So like, if you didn't check your ClickUp at the end of the day, that means you weren't doing your job. That's just a norm, just like locking and unlocking the door.
Okay. And then the Slack is where you communicate. So basically, there's like zero interruptions throughout the day of, hey, doctor, the patient needs you here. Hey, doctor, real quick, right? Like coming in while you're talking or anything like that. There's no interruptions.
No, I hate that. Do not ever come into my room when I'm with another patient. Slack it and I'll see. Obviously, everything has to be prepared appropriately first with the schedule to allow for that, right? I understand emergencies happen, but we schedule accordingly so we know there shouldn't be any like surprises that anyone should be walking into that treatment room and grabbing you for. Like, I know exactly when I'm going to be doing an exam for this patient. We already know that in huddle, and we talk about all of that. My patient will be in for hygiene, and then they're also getting a facial, and then they're also getting an Invisalign visit. And then they're staying for facial aesthetics, injectables. Huddle is so important to us because it's, hey, Marissa's going to be finishing up the facial at this time. She can seat this patient for you over here and take over photos for you here. So we talk about all that. And then doc is going to be needed during this time. If you are optimizing all of your resources, you should be running a seamless day, because in Oryx, you can put when the assistant is needed at certain times. So if I'm only in there for 5 minutes, the color block should be mostly assistant time. And then the doctor time is only 10 minutes of that block. So the team can look across the schedule and see exactly where I'm going to be at.
This is interesting. So then if you can break down to us, what does your morning huddle, how does that look like?
Everyone is responsible for their own column. So we have Marissa in the esthetician column, and then hygiene, and then operative, dental procedures, trying to like think of my columns right in front of me. And then we have facial aesthetics, and then Invisalign, and then Morpheus. So the clinical team is responsible for their patients in that column. So now they need to be doing their chart preps. So we have a checklist for that, right? And in that chart prep, part of it is reviewing what they were here for last time. I think one of my biggest pet peeve is asking a question to a patient that we should already know the answer to. I'm never going to ask you, when was your last cleaning? I should know that already. By doing my chart prep, I already know when their last cleaning was, when their last Botox appointment was, when their last Invisalign appointment was, what pending treatments they have. So now when I have them in my room, I'm just aligning all of their next appointments. They may already have their cleaning appointment or their tox appointment scheduled, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of realignment just to make it more efficient for the patient. So that's chart prep. And then so in huddle, we talk about things like that. We bring up what they're coming in here for, but also what pending treatments they have. And then what was talked about last time that we may need to re-educate on this time. Things like where certain people are going to be needed in certain rooms, where they need help flipping a room. That's all talked about. It's pretty much huddle for game day, right?
Yeah.
You got to know what positions are going to be in what place.
I like that. So it's very detailed. So let me ask you this. If there is ever like a hiccup or an interruption, maybe IT's down, I don't know, something, do you feel the stress of that? Like, oh, everything is out of place, or you're like, no, we got this still?
No, because it's nothing we haven't dealt with. And even if it has, we know how to troubleshoot. Everything is figure outable. I mean, this morning we came in and the internet didn't work.
I was just thinking that because I mean, everything that you met, ClickUp, or right, all that stuff runs on that.
So we came in, internet didn't work, and we troubleshooted that before. And sometimes it's just the router that needs to get reset. But we found that the router is connected to a extension cord that's connected to the power bank. And the power bank is what was not on. It needed to be reset. So it's just things like that. And what I love about my team now is that everyone knows how to troubleshoot. Like they may not know the answers, but they know where to start because we document everything. So the last time this happened, you can find that task on ClickUp of how you troubleshooted it.
So everything you troubleshoot, you document on ClickUp as well.
If a room 2 air water syringe broke or it wasn't working that day, we need to know about how you fixed it because it's going to happen to another chair just in the future someday, right? We need to know what caused it and how to prevent that or how to fix it next time. So it's not like only Alex knows how to do that because if Alex isn't there, the show still has to go on. But thank God Alex put notes of how she troubleshooted last time. So we're going to try all those efforts first. And then if those still don't work, then obviously we need to bring in other help.
No, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So then talk to me about your team then. You built a team right now and it sounds like they run seamlessly. They're amazing. They're great. What qualities do you look for when you're hiring and process and everything like that? But at the same time, how has that been essential to your growth right now so far in your practice?
I think we talked a little bit about this last time, the people analyzer. So it's going to be based off of our core values. So making sure just the human has that first, right? Because skills and everything else you can teach. So just making sure core values align first. And then from there, it's going to be, do they get the assignment? Do they get the job, the role, the responsibility? Do they want to do it? And then do they have the capacity to do it? And those things may not always be yeses. And that's where we have to figure out what is the issue then? And then how do we resolve that? Because sometimes, let's say they get the assignment, they get the job, the role, the responsibility, they want to do it all, they want to perform, but they may not have the capacity to, right? So maybe our patient load is growing, for instance, and maybe my assistant, Alex, just doesn't have the capacity to do that for all of these. Right now, she's running 3 rooms with me. She might hit a point where, hey, look, we're hitting capacity. Like, I can't run these rooms with you effectively and efficiently and still give 100% to every single patient. We may need to look into hiring someone else as well to help me out. So it's just conversations like that. And that goes to building a team that can help you identify issues and discuss them with you, not just be on one extreme to the other. And just speaking on an example of maybe when Alex hits capacity, some people who may not be emotionally intelligent, maybe like, this is just not a job for me. I need to find another office and jump ship. But you want to build a team that can openly discuss this with you and say, hey, I'm hitting capacity. Can we talk about what options there are or what solutions we can do about this? Because I'm just hitting capacity. I just can't do it.
How do you go about doing that, Pauline? I'm just trying to put myself in, let's just say, Alex's shoes. And I want to look like I'm competent, right? Like I'm capable. But at the same time, if I feel like, man, I'm hitting the wall, I do have a little fear where I'm like, man, Pauline's probably going to think, dude, you can't keep up. Like everybody else is keeping up, keep up kind of a thing. How do you make it comfortable enough to where I can tell you like, hey, Pauline, I can't keep up. But even though in your mind, you're like, you really can't keep up? Why can't you? You know what I mean? How do you make that comfortable? How do you open that up?
So just conversations, we can talk about it in our team meetings. It not just has to be one-on-ones. The one-on-ones are really when one specific employee may, I don't want to say underperforming or is
Hmm.
just off. And then you're just trying to have a conversation with them, figuring out what it is that they're off about. But speaking just like an example, something like this, where they feel like they're hitting a wall and we're just getting too busy and they don't have the capacity. This can actually be brought up in our operations meeting. So we can all openly talk about it. And a great example of that is I had an esthetician who started out with us who was also helping with marketing because her clinical schedule wasn't busy enough yet, right? So she was helping with the marketing. And then clinical grew, but then we had the same end goal, the vision, right? And I had to ask her, I said, do you want to grow in the clinical aspect or do you want to grow in the marketing aspect? Because then I know what position is going to be eventually needing to get filled when you hit capacity. So I think your team knowing that there will always be options and solutions versus feeling like I'm expected to do all of this is healthy because even in my clinical days, you're going to go through ebbs and flows and want to focus on certain things in different chapters of your career. So the example of that esthetician was she wanted to grow in her esthetician, her clinical career, right? So she wanted to step away from marketing. And those conversations were had in our meetings where it's like, okay, so let's discuss what our options are. Do we bring in a third party? Do we hire a marketing assistant? We weighed it all out. So that's why it's like, it's an open, honest conversation. It's, oh my gosh, you can't do both. Why can't you do both? That was never the expectation in the beginning.
In that scenario, what did you guys end up doing?
We
Going with
brought in
third
a
party?
third party.
Ah, okay. Could I ask who?
It's someone local here.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. So then right now, transitioning to your practice, what type of practice do you currently run? Is it all PPO, all kind of insurance? Is it fee for service only?
Fee for service. If the patient does have insurance with out-of-network benefits, we will
Hmm.
file it for them. And if they reimburse, they'll reimburse to the patient directly. But they are responsible for their services the day of.
Nice. And then so far, how is business looking for you? What's collections and production looking like?
So our collections ideally should always be higher than our productions because we collect deposits. And then we also have wallets. If we have time to get into it, I can explain that a little bit. So we have dental memberships and then we have aesthetic wallets. So patients are always getting money withdrawn out of their bank account into their credit at our office, whether they're receiving services or not. So building up like a piggy bank. So we
Hmm.
always have patients with credit in their accounts. So collections for us in this specific business model is higher than production.
So that's what wallets is. Like they're always taking something out, but it's like a piggy bank kind of a thing.
Yeah. So we built two tiers of it, and each of the tiers have different benefits. The
Mhm.
first tier, you get pretty much $1 off a unit of talks and then 10% off certain procedures. And then the next level up is $2 off a unit of talks and then 15% off of certain procedures. And it's neat because patients have been with me since I opened. And when we rolled this out last year, we were able to show them how much money they were spending here in a year. And it was way more than the wallet, right? So they're like,
Mhm.
oh, that's a no-brainer. I'm already spending this much here. Of course, I'm going to sign up so I can have savings. And then we have events. And we just really love building a community of like-minded people. So those wallets, every 15th of the month, $2.99 gets withdrawn out of your account and goes into Lay Dental's wallet, and you have a credit, and it's cool because patients who get Botox, they come in every 3 months. They don't feel like they're spending money because they have a credit.
Could I ask how many wallets, like in a rough range, do you have right now?
I'll know, but after our next meeting.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Interesting. So, how easy was this to roll out?
From the creating side of it was pretty easy because I wanted to make it as simplified as possible in order for my operations team to be able to explain it in a simple way of not just being caught up in like, oh, well, you get this or you get that. I just wanted to make it as simple as possible that it just rolls off their tongue to explain the benefits to the patients. The hard part that we learned as we rolled it out was little stipulations, like if a patient got pregnant, and we
Yeah.
wouldn't know that we were coming across these situations until it happened. And
Hmm.
that's how we learned on how to tweak our agreements. How long were we letting people pause it? What's the cancellation fee? Once they cancel, how long can they re-sign up? Because We don't want patients just signing up for the benefits and then canceling and then signing back up and then
Yep.
canceling.
Hmm.
So things like that like no one taught me this. You wouldn't know until you go through it. And so our first year, we just hit a year of rolling it out, was that we have in our issues list things like that, questions like that Caroline would bring up in our admin meeting, be like, hey, we have a patient who just got pregnant. How do we handle the wallet? And then that's when we're like, hey, well, let's talk about what would be fair, right? If this was us, like, how would we handle it? I think that's been the hard part. But now patient acceptance, patients love it. What they come in, they're like, oh my gosh, nothing's getting withdrawn out of my credit card if I'm just using what's in my credit. Or if they do, they feel like I'm only spending a little bit more. It's not just like a $5,000 bill every single time they come in versus it's, oh, I had this money there already. And it's kind of like we joke about like girl math, you know?
Yeah, interesting though. I like that. I like the idea of the wallet. But you're right, those issues come up only once they come up. So at any moment, and this is just good to know in general, like when we have an idea like this and then an issue comes up, was there ever a time where you're like, too many issues, too much happening right now? I'm thinking to cancel this whole thing. Or no, there was never a moment.
No, I love resolving issues and I love my team. Like nothing is too much. Like we're going to talk about it. We're going to resolve it. At a point when we first rolled out these wallets, we did the promotion. Like if you sign up this month, you get whatever that promotion was that month. Caroline would ask questions like, wait, how long are we honoring this to? Not urgent that she needed to come to my office and ask me. It was just listed on the issues list every week in admin. We would talk about it. We would solve it. Talk about it, solve it. And then it had to be easy on the team in Oryx too. So that was the hard part, right? Is that now how do we make our EMR seamless with what we want to roll out in our business? So a question that came up yesterday was a patient, she has dental insurance, she has a dental membership with us, and then she's also a Listhetic wallet holder. And Oryx only reads the primary, secondary coverage, right? So we have to run it as insurances. So we set up our membership and our wallets in our EMR as insurances in order for it to reflect fee guides and the discounts. And things that we learned that came up on our issues list was more of like an EMR issue of, okay, sometimes the discount wouldn't reflect and we would have to manually do the discounts. And then your brain goes down like, okay, embezzlement, and how do I refrain from that and prevent that if we're going to continue on with the wallets and memberships? So things like that came up in our issues list and we talk about it and we figured out why it was doing that. In this specific situation, it was because patient had dental insurance, which was showing up as like their primary coverage. And then secondary coverage was their dental plan that they have with us. And then the third was that wallet, but Oryx doesn't register or read that third. So it didn't give them the wallet discounts and promotions. So then we had to pivot and then we had to make combined plans, dental wallets, in order to have those fee guides reflect as the secondary coverage. So it's things like that, right? That you don't know what you don't know until it comes up, but you need to build a team that can resolve these things for you.
Interesting. Okay, so then could I ask, what are some key points that you can teach us or give us guidance on when it comes to embracing issues?
Welcome them, embrace them, like you said. No, that's the only way we're going to learn and get better. I think building a culture that you're not scared to have ideas. There's nothing wrong with having ideas and having different ways of resolving things. The discussion part of solving issues is probably going to be the longest part of it. And you'll start to notice that as you start discussing one issue, other issues come up, but then you have to like be so compartmentalized that like, okay, let's note that issue and then let's come back to that issue. Let's resolve this one first. Nothing is going to be seamless. Nothing is going to be butterflies and rainbows. For me, life hasn't been easy, but I think it's just my outlook in life. And as it comes, you have the tools to overcome them. And especially like when I got saved, I wasn't promised this beautiful, easy breezy life. I was promised a life that I have God in to help me handle anything that comes my way.
Interesting. I like that though. With the discussions of issues, is that in the morning huddle? Because I feel like you would need time.
Do not talk about issues in morning huddle at all. You do not want to talk about issues in morning huddle because you can go down a rabbit hole and you'll have tangents. Issues are brought up on the issues list in your weekly department meetings, and then also your quarterly meetings, and then your annual meeting.
Mm.
So in your weekly department meetings, these are department specific that needs to be handled that week. It's almost like a to-do list. And then as it gets bigger and bigger, your quarterly will be like the department heads. And the issues there would be more so what needs to get done this quarter. These are like bigger projects, right? So like one that I can think of on the top of my head that I want to bring up when it comes to marketing is we need to hire a marketing assistant. From there, the company itself has an issues list that needs to get done like on a bigger scale.
So it's like by time limit kind of a thing, quarterly and things like that. You mentioned marketing assistant a couple times. How many new patients are you getting a month right now?
We don't get that many. We only get about, I would say, like 30s.
Okay, so 30. And then right now, what are you doing for marketing and advertising?
Organic social media. And then I just hired someone for SEO a month or two ago. So I don't understand that. And I had to figure out, do I want to learn it? Do I want to understand it? Or do I want to hire someone that knows a lot more than me in this
Yeah.
and just only tell me what I need to know when it comes to like our meetings?
No, that's interesting. So then the marketing assistant will do what?
I feel like in marketing itself, it's a business in itself. There is someone that's doing branding. There's someone that's out and networking, being the face of it all. And then there's social media. And then there's your website, SEO, Google. I think the next step that I would want to see in marketing, and I don't know how yet, this is just my idea. And again, this is why we have to have our L10 meetings is I have the ideas. I don't know how we're going to get there, but I need to hire someone that's going to help me get there, right?
Yeah.
So with marketing, why I need this position is I think in the dental field, we're a little behind when it comes to targeting patients with what they need. And I'm saying that in the least salesy way, I hope. But when you go to a retail store online and you put something in your cart, let's say you don't buy right away, it's just sitting in your cart. You're probably getting emails about that, right? And you're probably getting social media targeted ads just because you looked it up or just because you have it in your cart. And eventually you're probably going to buy it or
Yeah.
something like it. I think in dentistry and at the previous offices I worked at, we were responsible for getting treatment accepted. If we weren't accepted, we were responsible for calling them in 2 days, in 2 weeks, in 2 months. So that was a human being being responsible to follow up on treatment plan pending treatment. And what happens if that person's not doing their job or that person's out or just didn't feel like doing it that day? It wasn't getting done. And this is something I'm going to have to talk to Rania about with Oryx. I have all these ideas for Oryx. Is that once I treatment plan someone for, let's say, Invisalign, I put it in the treatment plan and it's sitting there and patient's still not accepting for whatever reasons, they should be getting emails of what happens because they're not getting Invisalign. And it should be based off of the diagnosis that I clicked in Oryx, whether it's crowding causing periodontal disease, whether it's an imbalanced bite causing fractured teeth. And then it's just educational emails, educational targeted videos, social media. Why is that not happening yet? I don't know, right? And maybe this is way above my pay grade, but that's what I would like to see because right now it's all the efforts are on us and my team right now. We are re-educating the patients. Sometimes people need to hear it from a different source, not just like my assistant calling them again, or they're coming back in and then we're re-educating them at every single cleaning. And I'm exaggerating, but a lot of offices are having to do this. This is the only way that they are marketing to the patient after the treatment plan has already been proposed. They've already added it to their cart, but they haven't hit buy now yet. Why? What's happening there? The medical field is just a little behind in that. And I don't get emails about, like, for the longest time I was thinking about LASIK. I finally did it, but just because I, for myself, did it, but I wasn't getting like emails of why I would benefit from it or what are the pros and the cons. There's just so much that we could do. I mean, it's 2024. There's AI. There's so much technology. Like I should be able to just put a treatment plan in and then have this patient just being targeted for
all the time.
what's
Yeah.
going to happen to them if they don't.
Yeah. That's interesting. No, I like that. I like that a lot. Especially that happens a lot where you're just looking, you're not even buying anything yet, right? Nothing's in your cart. And then like ads on social media and are they listening to me? Kind of a thing, right? That's really interesting.
Having to like show previous cases to my patients. Hey, this is a tooth that looks just like yours, and this is what happened to them. or this is a case just like yours, and the patient was proactive about it and did this, and this could be you too. My team is having to do all the efforts. Right now, because I haven't found anything that provides that for me, I need a marketing assistant to kind of manually do that right now. At the end of every day, pull up what patients treatment plan for Invisalign, what patients got treatment plan for no prep veneers, and then put them in this group of emails that we're going to constantly send out, or
Yeah.
this constant social media, sending them certain videos. And, so
Like a drip campaign until they buy. Interesting. I like this. Okay. So then one of the questions I wanted to ask you is throughout the process of your startup, right, your practice, what's been some of the best companies you worked with and then some of the worst or companies that you felt just didn't vibe with you?
So let's break it down company wise. I would say admin, operations. I started with Open Dental and Flex and Mango. So those were like the little combo for how we ran in the office. Open Dental was super easy to get started with. Like, it's so customizable. I didn't use their actual e-services or anything like that. I added on Flex to be able to do that, to be able to text patients for notifications, confirmations, emails, all that was through Flex. Mango was for my phones. I was really happy with my little trio right there, but I needed something else cloud-based. Because our meetings, we try to be out of the office as much as we can. It's just kind of like, I love to work in coffee shops, and having Open Dental didn't really allow me to do that unless I was remoting in. So company wise, I really was happy with those three products and the customer service. And the only reason I really shifted was because I needed something cloud-based, and then also something that was more clinical heavy when it came to findings and treatment planning and stuff. So then I met Rania at the Making of a Startup retreat a couple years ago, and then I started looking into her product. When we initially were going to convert, it was tough. I'm not going to lie. It was a very dark time during that startup because I was like, did I make the right decision? My team is stressed out. Like, it was heavy. And I just don't think we asked the right questions during that time to convert. And maybe they didn't know what all we were looking for before we converted. So we actually retracted, actually went back to Open Dental and Flex. And then that's when I made a very clear Google sheet of what I needed before we could even convert. And there were things that they were working on that were non-negotiables for me because I'm a very text-heavy office. You'll go to voicemail and then they'll text you back. I think one of the non-negotiables was that, let's say, Michael, you are not in my system because obviously you're not a patient of mine. But if you were interested in being a patient or you're a potential lead, you texted my office, it went nowhere. So that was a lost lead. And that was a huge concern of mine because so many patients text us, or from our social media, we'll say text blah, blah, blah to this number if you're interested, right?
Yeah.
But we also get leads. So I will say after I made a very clear list of what my expectations were and what I really needed. And then I created a very clear department checklist before we converted. Oryx has been incredible to work with because they are so open to feedback. There's so many things that they are still working on, and they're working on with you in your startup. So I feel like they're their own startup company, but then it's also mirroring what the growth in my practice right now of what I'm needing. Even talking about the drip campaign, hopefully Rania, maybe that's in their plans and that's going to happen. But there's so many options within Oryx that we still haven't even optimized yet. And they're constantly updating and sending out webinars every single week. And they're constantly like doing things with their product that mirrors the growth and the direction that my practice is trying to grow in.
I like that. Okay, so those are the companies that you feel like were the best right now.
IT was a hard one. I went with someone local and it saved me a lot of money, but I'm learning. I just didn't know what I didn't know about IT. I think how my office is set up is a little antiquated when it comes to like HDMI cords and speakers. And I was just trusting what treatment plan my IT person gave me, but now I'm learning there's just so many progressive options that now I'm not going to go back, and it's just not a priority to address right now, but eventually needs to be addressed.
Interesting. Okay. Pauline, any words of advice that you can give to someone who's about to do their startup or thinking to do a startup?
Stop thinking about it. I would say let the people who are think about it, just keep thinking then. Start acting, start doing it, because you're never going to know everything about everything. You have to learn along the way. just compartmentalize. Like I just admitted to you, I don't know anything about IT, right? That wasn't going to keep me from opening my practice. So stop letting these barriers keep you from chasing after your dreams, because if this is truly what you want, there's always going to be things that you don't know. And that's the beauty of business ownership, is you have to keep learning and you have to keep up and be innovative and open to innovation in order to grow your business. And everyone has a different why. You just have to stay true to that. And business ownership isn't easier. It isn't, oh my gosh, I want to make my own schedule. I want to work under my own conditions, da 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 da. That is not why you should be going into business ownership.
So then why? If you could give us like, this is why you need to go into business ownership.
I'm going to go back to my mission statement, is that we're humans working on humans with humans. That resonates with me because of how I saw my parents affect people in their life, whether it be their employees or their clients, especially my dad. He immigrated here from Vietnam and he learned about the nail industry and he taught everyone else around him. And he was able to open up doors for other families that may not have those opportunities without my dad. And I feel like you're just opening up opportunities for other people and you're making connections for other people. Like I meet patients that are going through this, and then some other patient brings up something to me. And obviously with permission, I asked this other patient, like, hey, I have someone else that's going through something very similar to you. Would you mind if I connected you guys? So I love connecting people. I love sharing opportunities with people. I love sharing what I'm learning in life, whether it be my personal, professional life. I think my why is humans.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you work for someone else, they have a different vision. And it's not wrong, it's just different. So if you envision your life differently and you envision how you impact other lives differently, then this is your opportunity to start your own in doing that.
I love it. Pauline, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. But before we say goodbye, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
I'm just on Instagram right now, Dr. Pauline Lee.
That's going to be in the show notes below. So definitely reach out to Pauline. And Pauline, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll hear from you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.